Welcome to the Cash Flow Academy podcast. I'm your host, Andy Tanner. This is where we make investing fun, simple, and real. Great to have you with us. This is a special edition where we've got Corey Halliday, who usually joins us, is actually he's in Paris with his family on a European vacation. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to interview Noah, interview style, whether to just converse, but learn a little bit more about Noah and what it's like to evolve as an investor, and particularly a technical analyst and trader. So this is going to be a great podcast to get insights. I've asked Noah to give us some of the more important things that have happened to him in his journey. So with that, subscribe, hit your notification bell, and very important to go, if you haven't done this yet, go to cashflowbonus.com. We've got great resources there. Right now, we've got a great ebook. It's free, easy to read, short, but it will put you on the path of action. And just, don't take my word for it. Prove it to yourself. Go through that ebook and just look at it and see if you don't just say, wow, if I followed these simple steps and implemented these behaviors in my life, if it wouldn't absolutely change your financial situation. So with that, let's start our interview. Ladies and gentlemen, Noah Davidson.
Excited to be here. What an opportunity.
Usually I say, Noah, give us a little background about yourself, but this time we're going to take a deeper dive.
All right.
Because you've had a great journey and, years and years of experience. I know we can't compress all that into a podcast, but I can guarantee that there's going to be some lessons and hopefully some desires and beliefs and inspiration that come. You and I are regular guys. We've known each other probably 20 years. I don't know how long we've known each other.
Sounds about right.
Seems like that.
More than that, actually.
But we're not just we don't just teach at the Cashflow Academy together. I consider him one of my best, closest, dearest friends. Our wives get along great. We do a lot of socializing, and we eat a lot together. So there, which we will do today after the podcast is over. We will be partaking. So, with that, Noah, thanks for flying solo with me without our friend Corey.
Well, Corey took his family to Paris. I took my family to the local amusement park, and one of us wasted our money, and it was not Corey.
Yeah.
But good summer vacation.
I'll tell you, great stuff. You started out. You and I had similar paths. I don't know what happened to you. I don't even know this. For me, I went and played basketball in college and then just didn't know what I was going to do and wound up in sales. How did that work for you? Because you started selling software. You were with Metastock for a long time.
Yeah.
You sold Gateway computers for a while.
I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. Like, no idea. That was one of those things where, you go to college to discover yourself. I got to go to college on an athletic scholarship. I was a wrestler.
I did know you were a wrestler, but I didn't know you had a scholarship to
wrestle. They paid for me to go to school, which was nice. But then they dissolved the program because they cut funding. And so I ended up still going to school. They honored my scholarship. But then I still had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so I just kind of meandered and floated. I went to school for 7 years and never got a degree. Lots of people go to school for 7 years.
They're called doctors.
Yeah, they're called doctors. But in that time, I was working full time. I was doing manual labor, some of those hard jobs. And then I wound up meeting a person. I got hired to sell computers during the .com boom.
Bang.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty good at talking to people. I'm pretty good at this idea of selling stuff. And I don't know that I was a great salesman. It was really just the .com boom, and I was selling computers, which was like fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
But during that time, the first thing I was introduced to was just a company stock program where you could buy company shares at a discount and get vested. And then that got me into the idea of, okay, maybe I'll buy some more shares on my own. And I bought some shares of Gateway, and the stock price doubled, and I thought I was a genius.
Boom, boom, boom.
But, it was also they were rolling out new chips. Intel had new chips, and AMD was coming out with their new processors. So I'm like, maybe I should start putting some money into these other companies. And so I bought a little bit of, AMD stock, and I picked up some NVIDIA shares. Man, I wish I still had those shares. And this is back when they were first coming out with like video processing cards. And so I managed to get the investing bug. But then I also managed to lose money during the .com boom because I had no idea what I was doing.
Everyone was a genius because you could have lined up the NASDAQ on a board and throw darts on the board and picked winners because they all won. Everyone thought they were a genius until about March of 2000.
Right. And in that time, I changed sales jobs, and I jumped from a couple jobs from here to there, and then I did wind up getting hired by Metastock. And they hired me because I had sales.
They're
experience.
still around.
They're still around. They're awesome. I'm good friends with those guys, and they've got. If you're like a hardcore analyst and you want toys, they've got the coolest analytical toys out there. But that's a very narrow. It's like made by engineers for engineers type of thing. Made for quants, by quants type of stuff. But it's really, really cool, And that's where I started understanding not just random stock picking and investing. I started to learn technical analysis.
So a couple things on that. 3 things come to mind. First of all, what's the biggest takeaway from your first experience of being a retail trader, a new trader in the .com? What's the lesson? That's the first question I got on that.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I don't know. It really is. A lot of it has to do with just overall market conditions. Cause like the idea of like a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
But what I learned is that there's a difference between just kind of putting money in and hoping and praying and having a strategic, systematic approach.
Yeah.
And that's where I started to understand the idea of systems and rules and approaching the market like a professional, not an amateur.
See, that is the shift between advice to education in my mind, because when I talk to people that are new to this, it's very hard to explain their mindset. And maybe listeners, if they resonate with this might be helpful. But most people approach investing from advice culture because their thought is, well, I just want to make money, and if I buy the right thing, I'll make money, so tell me to buy the right thing. And they think it is that simple, and it's not even remotely like that. It is like, it is a process. It does have rules. It is fluid. It is plastic. It is, since we really can't predict the future, the education will trump the advice. And I don't know anyone who hasn't made that move, that eventually loses in the advice culture, loses by getting the hot tip or whatever, and finally just sits down and gets serious about learning how investing works. Everyone makes that transition that becomes successful that I've known.
Well, yeah, and there really is a difference between an amateur and a professional. Like an amateur thinks it's about the stock pick, thinks it's about finding that magic bullet. The professional understands it's about risk management. Because
okay, you just hit a bullseye on that. So expand on that. What does it mean to think it's about the stock pick? What does that look like? And what does it mean to understand it's about the risk? Well, what is that shift?
I could probably use a whole bunch of sound bites to describe this. Fortunes are made on the way up. Reputations are made on the way down. So markets on average are wired to go up. Everybody gets up and goes to work every day to help their companies grow and generate revenue, generate products.
Population grows, more mouths to feed, more
overall,
consumers to consume.
The market goes through periods of volatility and risk, and surviving the .com boom, surviving the 2008 meltdown, surviving every market vicissitude since then. I kind of cut my teeth right as it went into that .com bust, and everybody's riding high, thinking they're a genius. And, in a classic Warren Buffett soundbite, when the tide goes out, you find out who's swimming without shorts. And that first round of getting the market rug pulled out from underneath you kind of woke me up to like, oh, wow, like there's way more to this. And that's when I started working with the Metastock folks. And I learned a little bit more about short-term trading And it took me a while to work my way back into the long-term investor mindset.
Mm-hmm.
But what I learned about short-term thinking is I can control and manage risk. I can play the markets on my terms. I can't control the market outcome. Markets go up, down, and sideways. But what I can control is how I structure and position myself so that whatever the outcome is, it's acceptable to me.
So I want to hit on that because I have some insight to being your student and also your friend. Is you have a decision tree you use, and I think this is genius because there's really only 5 outcomes for a stock. It can go up a lot, it can go up a little, it can go sideways, it can go down a little, it can go down a lot. And there's really 5 directions. And if you want to really get nitpicky, you'd say there's 3. There's
5. I agree with that assessment.
But there's up, down, and sideways.
Well, and the market price is in 3. It's the going up a lot and going down a lot that are the outliers,
right? Where
you can hit home runs, and that happens from time to time.
That's our Galton board up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? The outliers.
Absolutely.
But what is interesting is rather than having a crystal ball of knowing which of those 5 or 3, whatever you want to call it, are going, what you do is you create a plan for all of them.
Correct.
Which means you will never be surprised ever. It isn't like you're saying, oh, well, this happened. I didn't see that coming, because it can go up a lot, down a lot, up a little, down a little, or sideways. And you'll say, okay, I'm going to be in this trade for 2 weeks, whatever it is. And one of those is going to happen. And this is how I will react, adjust, or behave. So you're never surprised. You're never like, oh my gosh, because you have a plan. So it's almost like you live in a multiverse where you say, well, in this multiverse it went up, in this multiverse it's going to go down, and you're going to be right. You have to be right with one of them. And that idea is something that we brought. This is one of the gifts you give the students of the Cashflow Academy, is in the Mentor Club each week. You walk through a lot of this stuff and you actually demonstrate for people what it looks like to trade this way, to where you say, okay, it went down, this is what we do, but we have plans for this in advance, so we're not cut to the quick.
Right. And from, longer term investing, controlling that risk outcome versus short term trading and controlling those risk outcomes, and then learning to take what the market gives. Like, that's one of the things. Like, there are times where the market's just ripping bullish. There's times when the market's, panicked and ripping down bearish. But there's a lot of time where the market's just oscillating prices. And so there's different strategies one can implement to figure out how to pull money out of the markets and how to limit your downside risk. And, there is no one magic system out there. And so, in my evolution, it started out again like getting the hot stock tip. And then it moved into, if I could just get really, really good at short-term stock picking, I could get rich.
Yeah.
And, I got pretty good at short-term stock picking. But then
you're constantly using technicals to predict the future, which isn't what they're for.
Well, and technicals, that's kind of the mental trap people fall into. That I thought for a moment. Well, here's the problem, Andy. I was right just enough.
That's like my golf game. I'll hit one straight per 18 holes. And I'm like, I can do this.
Yes. I was right just enough.
I think I'm good.
To believe I had the ability to predict the future. Like, if I could just figure out what the pattern was or what the cycle was or where we were in that process, I could predict the future and make lots of money. And again, sometimes my predictions or anticipations were right. What I discovered relatively quickly is I had a behavioral problem when I was wrong. And this, you'll hear these kind of little platitudes in the market, like cut your losers short, let your winners run, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Psychologically, people are not wired to manage.
You're fighting your limbic system. You're fighting your subconscious. You're fighting your biology constantly.
Because of the way the average human being is wired, we have our behavioral patterns often lead to letting the losers ride and taking the winners, like, oh, I won a little money. Woohoo, one in the hand's better than two in the bush type of stuff.
When we come back from break, I'm going to show people how I think they can fix that.
Oh, yeah. It's gonna be awesome.
If you're listening, the question I always have when I'm listening to a podcast is, how does this apply to me? What do I get out of this? What is my benefit? And if I were listening to this and I were a newbie, what I would hope people would be gleaning right now is say, okay, am I trying to predict the future, and how often am I right? And am I trying to pursue that same path that Noah said when I pulled the plug on that path? You're not 3 feet from gold where you just keep going, all of a sudden, bing, you know how to predict the future. It's the process that the earlier people figure that out, that they can't do it. And there's an irony in thalassemolitis. Thalassemolitis, I've told you this story. Do you know thallus? So thalassemolitis is the oldest and first of the great Greek sages. And I ran into him by studying the options market, where what he did years and years ago, I ran into this. I was trying to figure out what the first option was in history. And it's widely agreed that it was this. It was the first time that we really saw the intrinsic value of a contract explode, and then those contracts were liquidated without being executed. So what happened was he was a philosopher, number one, an astronomer, number two, and he predicted an eclipse and was right, and everyone thought, wow. And a few years after he predicted the eclipse, whether by luck or by science, we don't know, he predicted an olive crop, bumper crop. It says we're going to have more olives this year than any others. And he was a guy that was scrutinized and criticized a lot for all the philosophizing. And he says, why don't you're poor, you guys walk around in these marble columns in your toga philosophizing. Why don't you make some money in your life? He says, all right, I'll make some money in my life. So he predicts this olive crop, and he goes out to everyone that owns an olive press, like everyone. And he says, I want to lease your olive press for this season. I'll pay you some money now for the chance to lease this from you. So they gave him a premium. And they said, okay, I'll take it. Well, when the olive crop came in, he had monopolized the ability to create olive oil. And if someone wanted to take their olives and turn them into oil and sell it, they had to go through him. He held the cards. And he says, well, these contracts are transferable. The intrinsic value of those contracts went through the roof. So he sold the contracts, made a freaking mint and that. Well,
he upgraded his toga.
He bought a better toga, better sandals, got better little.
Got one of those laurels.
Yeah, got the big, the fresh one,
Oh yeah.
and what's interesting is but what he's known for when they inscribed these great sages, and he was the first of the Greek sages, this sage advice. The quote that he has that he's best known for is interesting. Know thyself, which is a warning that I am my own worst enemy. I have a limbic system. Mm-hmm. I have neurotransmitters. I have a subconscious mind. And if you read Jack Schwager's book, the ability to overcome that is what you're trying to do. It's a personal development thing. If a person were listening to say, you know what, I'm going to make a shift, I'm going to try something, rather than keep trying to predict the future or think that I'm going to find the stock that's going to go up, what if I just work on my ability to manage the emotions of money, to manage myself? Because I notice in trading, it's my own worst enemy. It's always me that is making a mistake. When I used to make a lot of them early, I make less now, still make them. But when we come back, I'm going to talk about what I think the answer is that, and we'll see what you think the answer is, and we'll see if we're on the same page or not. You're watching the Cashflow Academy show. I get a chance to talk to my dear friend Noah Davidson and share him with you. Again, make sure you like, subscribe. If you like this content, get a notification bell, hit that so when new content comes out, you've got it. And then remember, go to cashflowbonus.com to get your free stuff and start the process of action where you're not just listening to content, but that helps you apply it. We'll be right back.
So far, it's been great. I needed a source where I could really enrich my education through stocks. I didn't really have an avenue for it, and it's helped me a lot. The simplicity has really gotten me on the track to where I enjoy the learning as well as it's really solidifying in my mind. And like, they're not just trying to sell you something, they really care about the people that are in the course, and they really do care about you and your personal goals, and what you want to do is to help you and your family and whatever your goals are in life through that. So it's really been great.
Welcome back to the Cashflow Academy podcast. I'm Andy Tanner, your host. This is where we make investing a lot of fun. We keep it simple, and it's always real with what we do. I'm here with my friend Noah Davidson. And when we left off, we were talking about know thyself and this idea that it's almost like every successful investor and trader goes through this process of going from advice and predicting and trying to find that stock that's going to pop to really a system and also an ability to deal with your own. The default setting is to lose money. You want to talk about that a little bit before I talk about how I think it's solved?
Yeah, the default setting is to lose money, which I agree with 100%. A couple of guys won a Nobel Prize in economics for solving or understanding this best.
You talking about Black-Scholes? Or?
No, Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman.
How do you come up with this stuff? How do you're a nerd.
I am a nerd. I study
Bad.
a lot. Well,
a wrestler nerd.
Yeah, I didn't really like school, but I love learning.
Yeah.
So, it's an interesting, they call it prospect theory, and they won a Nobel Prize in economics, behavioral economics, which was a new field they created. And one of the funny things is like you get these people who are economists. And if economists are so smart, how come they get it wrong so often?
And how come they don't invest?
Exactly.
I interview economists on this show constantly, and I'm not going to name names to disparage any of them, but I will just tell you, after the show, I always ask them to hang out so I can thank them and just thanks for everything. And then I ask them what they're investing in. And to a man or woman, I don't invest. I just study the numbers. I go, well, you don't apply this at all? There's no applied economics? No, I leave that to guys like you that are better at that. I just like to look at the numbers. I go, but why study it if you're not going to use it to position yourself as a profit? Well, I'm not really good at that. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it is weird. And I think there's got to be a motivation in there somewhere, and people have to find that motivation because it's a journey of self-discovery. And so kind of in my experience, I always leave out this little piece of my life that was one of the greatest motivating factors ever. And so I had the success in the markets where I sampled it. I got to see what it was like.
Got to taste it.
I got to taste it. And then I went through that period between where I lost some money in that when the market crashed in 2000. And I found this job in the middle that was the worst job I have ever had. And it kept my family fed, but I was slowly dying inside. You know that panic attack people would get when they have to go to work on Monday?
Yeah.
Well, that was coming in on Friday when I was leaving work. Like I was leaving
just
work.
The thought of
and
it.
I was just like silently sobbing inside because I knew I had to go back. And they ended up laying me off, but I managed to get the job working for Metastock right after that. So I had this year of just absolute, I knew I couldn't work for the corporate America machine for the rest of my life. I just knew that about myself. And so when I landed at Metastock and I started seeing how people were thinking about the markets differently, the way these people approached the markets was they were analytical. But they were analytical not just on picking the right stocks. They were always systematic about the risk and removing from the equation that automatic losing, that built-in wiring to lose money. And what it comes down to is loss aversion. People don't like losing. It's psychologically
you see it in the casinos all the time. When a guy gets down 100, he'll spend 500 trying to get the 100 back.
Yeah, and I did that once. I went to the ATM at a casino because I was going to get even.
Yeah.
And I just got deeper.
Yeah.
People they end up, and it's really, really funny. These guys, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, they won the Nobel Prize in economics. And Daniel Kahneman wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. And he's a great, thinker. But what they discovered is people they don't behave rationally around money. They have behavioral patterns that tend to reveal themselves where they become risk seekers when facing a loss, and they're risk averse from the get-go. So people, they
avoid risk before they get in.
But
once they do take the risk to get in, if they lose, they'll risk.
They continue to risk.
They go nuts.
Right.
And we've actually done this in a couple of ways. Number one, you can see it in the market because that's where the volatility comes from. I mean, obviously the GDP, the fundamentals don't vary to the degree that the technicals do. There's just there's an absolute detachment there. But the other thing, the other thing we see personally is when we'll do live workshops. We did one in Houston, and we have exercises that we'll put in, and it works every single time with every group. I mean, I don't know how many times I've taught hundreds of live workshops in my day. You've done the same, and it works every single time.
Yep.
Like Galton board,
Yes.
predictable.
People are relatively predictable in that regard. We
Yeah.
know that they are going to behave irrationally. And when faced, even just a theoretical loss, like psychologically, it could be a paper trade.
Yeah, we're in our exercise, we have poker chips we pass
Right.
out. They start with money that's not even real, but they will fall into that trap every single time without fail. And that's a huge insight. So I'm listening to this, the optimism bias, Tally Sherritt, will say, well, everyone else is like that, but not me. No, it's you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you have a limbic system, you have a heart, you have lungs,
Yep.
you have tissue, you have neurotransmitters, and you have how many thousands of years of evolution, or however God created you, whichever one you believe. You are who you are, and you're created or evolved in that way, and that is the truth. You have neurotransmitters, you have a subconscious mind, you have a limbic system to deal with.
Well, and it is subconscious. People aren't consciously aware.
Which makes it really hard to fix.
Right. And so one of the first things we can do is we can bring that into your conscious awareness and just help you understand that this is how people behave, and you're not different.
Yeah.
And so if that's something you've struggled with, then spending time with people like me, who, I mean, again, solving for this equation, I've had the opportunity to coach hundreds and hundreds of people one-on-one. I don't even know how many. I used to sit and work coaching one-on-one sessions with new traders and investors and try to help them solve for that equation, overcome those same challenges. Because at first they think it's about stock picking.
Yeah,
And
which is
a skill set.
Everyone goes
Yeah.
through this evolution that we've talked
Which
about.
you do need to develop.
Yep.
You want to become a good stock picker, whether it's fundamentally for an investment or technically for a short-term trade. And it finally kind of occurred to me, like, what you're doing as an investor is very different than what you're doing as a trader.
And it's Benjamin Graham in the book Intelligent Investor begins the book with that by saying, look, there's nothing wrong with speculating. There's nothing wrong with investing. But don't confuse one with the other,
Yes.
and don't think you're doing one when you're doing the other. And The Intelligent Investor is a book on temperament. It is a book on the very things we're talking about. It doesn't give it's got sample formulas for valuation. Sure, they're included. But, Buffett talks about chapter 8 and chapter 20, and they are on temperament. They're about dealing with know thyself.
And know thyself is really the secret. So, yeah, I used to think it was me versus the market, but it's not. It's me versus myself and my own internal dialogue and psychology.
So I said I had a solution to this. I'm going to see.
Okay.
So the thing that's amazing about Noah is Noah was able to learn from someone that I could never learn from, because I would talk to this guy. Yoda was pretty simple. Fear, dark side, fear. Pretty easy to learn from Yoda. I would have conversations with this individual, and I think I'm going to take a guess he's one of your good mentors. But when I would finish conversation, he was so far beyond me that, he was speaking Japanese. I really think so.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Jeff.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I got into the software end of things, through which I met a handful of guys who were advanced trainers and mentors, and they're running a hedge fund, and they're doing all of these things that were way beyond me.
Jeff was not just a technical analyst, but he would pioneer because he could code, and that's where I would get crushed, because he would look at modeling in terms of what he could create in computer modeling and computer code.
Correct.
And that was above my pay grade, and I'd leave his office. Like I hired him a couple times to walk me through stuff, because I knew he had made a name for himself of this guy that was just really intelligent, could really give you insight. I remember going down to his office once, and I paid him to mentor me, and I left saying, man, I think I'm more confused.
Yeah, he's the absent-minded professor, and probably the reason we got
The
along
evil
so
genius.
much. Well, because we both are nonlinear thinkers.
Yeah.
A lot of people think like step A, step B.
I'm not even linear. I'm like point.
Yeah.
I don't even draw the line. I'm a point.
So following Jeff is like throwing a Super Ball in a room and watching it.
That's exactly what that is exactly
Yes.
what it's like, is having a blue Super Ball in a room this big going.
Exactly.
That's exactly what it's like.
But for some reason, I was able to track with him, and his skill level and he's like kind of a quant in that regard, and his math skills are way beyond mine. His programming, I can't program or code.
Yeah.
But I understood conceptually what he was talking about, and what I was able to do, and what really broke me into the educational aspect of this was I could translate that into common parlance.
What you did for me is you were the conduit that helped. Like, I value simplicity. There's value. Simplicity is worth a lot of money to me. I put a high value on it because if it's not simple, I can't use it. Simplicity is the conduit to usefulness. It's where knowledge becomes applicable. But if I don't understand it, like my organic chemistry class in college was a waste of the scholarship money because it wasn't simple. I couldn't use it. I couldn't apply it. So you had to kind of be a genius to rise up. I hate having to rise up to the knowledge. I love when the knowledge is brought to me. And that's that's your talent.
Simplicity is the greatest form of sophistication.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look at your iPhone in your pocket, the way that thing exploded. You think about the way technology, computers like that, the predecessors to that, the Palm Pilot or the BlackBerry, like those were little complex little computers that that were a little bit more, and then they just made it simple touch screen, user interface friendly, simple one button. And they don't even have that button anymore. It's that simple. And so the ability to take something complicated and boil it down to simple was the genius of Steve Jobs, right? Well, when you go talk to a financial advisor or a fund manager, they use language not so much to communicate, but to
show off.
Yeah.
No, I'm smart. You're dumb.
Smart, you're dumb.
No, as a teacher, you have to avoid this because it's a wonderful dopamine hit to be a teacher because it makes you feel smart and popular and successful and funny, and you're giving, and it kind of can play a mental game with you. It's so important for teachers to get here level instead of speaking down, speak across.
Well, and I learned in the teaching process where a lot of teachers will sit there and dangle information like, I'm so smart, come up and get it.
Yeah.
And the greatest teachers I had are like, that's one of the reasons I love hanging out with Andy is because Andy said, no, you come in underneath and you lift people up.
You pull it out of them.
Yep, absolutely.
You don't put it into them, you pull it out of them.
Right. And so one of the things I focused on over the years is trying to help people go from where they are to where they want to be through behavioral patterns. It's a behavioral therapy, so to speak, where they're going from where they are to where they can be, but by altering the way they think and behave.
But that's where I think the problem gets solved is you shift from asking the question of what to who. If a person is listening to this and they really want to make it, when they can shift from what to who, and what I mean by that is I tell the story all the time, but it is a pattern I've seen 1,000 million times, and it is every time. For example, I could, if we invented fishing and we're the first guys going to go catch a fish, we probably started with a stick or a rock or trying to grab it with our hands, and then it evolves into, well, what if we put bait out there and put a hook in it and put a line in there? And, now you go to Bass Pro Shops and a man will spend any amount of money to catch a fish or to straighten out their slice on the golf course. One of those two.
Yep.
Will spend money. But you stand on the shoulders of those that came before and you learn how to fish. And the idea of the journeyman and the apprentice has worked for thousands of years where mom and dad take me by the hand and they teach me as parents by what they learned, and it's the sensei, the one who's gone before.
Yes. Is
the sensei, the man or the woman who's gone before. And when Marcy and I stopped asking what to do and asked who to hang out with, our lives changed drastically. I'm a product of none of my own genius. I mean, I'm sure I have God-given gifts that I'm going to be grateful for. One of them is simplicity. That's a natural thing. I've worked to enhance that talent. I've literally studied how to make things more simple. I care about it, but I did have that innate virtuoso of simplicity embedded in me. I just tried to enhance it. But when I went from the idea of school to mentorship, it's different. Mm-hmm. Mentorship is about who, and that's why we named it the Mentor Club. is the Mentor Club's a place to find the who. And you hang out with the who and you get mentored and journeymaned, and that helps that self-discovery, that self-destruction halt, because now it doesn't matter what I know, it matters what you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what I do, it matters what you do. And all of the mistakes that have to be made to get there on your own can be really reduced, not eliminated, but reduced, because I have someone who's gone before who sees the world in a different place. How many trades do you think you have under your belt in your life? I mean, that's an astronomical number. How many?
This week?
I mean, in your life, if you had to guess,
I couldn't
that's
count.
like guessing the amount of,
That's like how many marbles in that, or gumballs in the giant case?
how many
that they have people
gumballs
guess?
are in that semi-truck or
Yeah,
in that
who
train load?
knows? I have
I
no
mean,
idea.
it's got to be tens of thousands, if not, I mean, I don't know how many it is. It's a lot. Between paper trade, I know that in the Mentor Club, I think we tried to guesstimate it once, and on our advertising it says over 5,000, but I think it's just in the Mentor Club we're getting to 10.
Well, I spent a lot of years as a day trader, so if we include that,
geez.
that stuff.
Well, now that's just your neurosis.
yeah.
getting out of the
So
way.
I mean, frequency of trade, and that's experience.
But the
yeah.
thing is, if you've done it that many times, you've done it 1,000 times. Well, you know, as a basketball coach, I get people are really kind. You know, Andy, you have a knack for these kids and coaching championships, and you know, how'd you do this? I go, well, you know, I've done it a lot of times. You know, as a player and a coach,
Yeah.
I've just done it a lot, and I kind of know how to deal with the demons, and I know how it works. So the story I often tell is my wife and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and we thought it was a book about what? Well, it was about assets and liabilities. It was about what? How do you buy? What do you do? What do you look for? What? You know, how? And we went out and we tried to buy real estate and we failed and couldn't do it. And, you know, we were our own worst enemy, and ignorance and bad habits and everything else. We just didn't have the perspective. And Marcy says, let's reread it. And she says, look at the cover. There it is, Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's not a what, it's a who.
Yeah.
The reason Robert made it wasn't a what, it was a rich dad. Okay, Jeff, I got Robert and Than and 1,000 others. We both have Jeff, you better than me.
Yeah.
I have you. I have Corey. Buffett had Benjamin Graham. Philtown had the Wolf. I mean, everybody that really crushes it, you know, whether you like Trump or not, he had his dad. I mean, having Fred was not a disadvantage. He seeded him with $1 million. But if you don't know what you're doing, a lot of people have lost $1 million. He had to know what to do with that. And his dad gave him two gifts where he was almost destined to do well in spite of himself, because he had knowledge and money at the same time. Forget about it, you know.
Well,
but the knowledge was more important than the money.
Well, that's absolutely true. So in my progression, I told you about the worst job I ever had. That was the motivation that put me into self-study. Like I studied,
Yeah.
I read, I studied.
That's something you and I have in common.
And I obsessed, and I struggled. And I had a similar epiphany. It was the dawned on me, it's not the what, it's the who. And I wasn't even that conscious about it. It was more of a, I want to hang out with that guy. Because I see what he's doing, and so it was, and that opened the doorway to, okay, first it was Jeff, then it was Micah, then it was Gino, then it was
all those
King,
guys.
then it was all those people that I was hanging
Micah,
out with. Yeah,
like these names are, like these are Mount Rushmore for us. Like Micah now is different than Jeff for me. Micah was huge for me. And actually, I don't know, did you ever work with Rob?
Yeah.
So I go up to Rob's house, and I tried to pay him to do it, and he wouldn't take money. He said, Andy, you're a friend. He said, I'm going to help you do this. And so I think we went and got him a big gift certificate to go buy a big screen or something. It really meant a lot to me, because Rob, when I sat down at his house, at his kitchen table, and he started drawing risk graphs out of his head and explaining risks to me through risk graphs that weren't computerized, he was just drawing them out of his brain on a scratch paper. And I saw that, and I was like, I want that skill. That dude sees, it's like Neo. He just sees the code. He just saw it in his brain, and I never thought I'd get there, and yet it didn't take hardly any time at all to where I was like, got it.
Yep.
Bang. Got it. I can see it.
Well, I love risk graphs because I'm a visual thinker. So one of the other things I've learned over the years is people learn differently. You've got visual learners, you got auditory learners, you got kinesthetic. Most people can handle kinesthetics because it involves more senses.
Yeah.
And you got analytic type personalities, and there's different personality types. Like you got one of the harder people for me to teach. Originally, I struggled with like some of the analytical people because they wanted
engineers are tough.
Yeah, but they're actually relatively simple because
But they actually crush once they get
once they get there.
Yeah.
The person that I always struggled with the most was the person who was just driven, like I have to win.
That's me, man.
The winner
yeah,
guy.
That's me.
Because they have to learn how to lose in order to win.
And it's so hard.
And that's one of the great ironies of being a trader and an investor.
It's pride. It's so hard to be competitive and be wrong and understand that you're going to have some expense trades. You're going to draw downs.
Yeah. And it's a natural part of the business.
And that's why those guys couldn't run a casino, because a casino is going to lose some hands of blackjack. They're going to lose some spins of the wheel. But the fact they know they'll win more than they lose, and they have table limits and rules, and they just say, keep it going, boys. Right. I was always the guy, and I have to win every time, or I'm going to exclaim either way.
Right. And you get a little bit of ego involved. And then I would
know thyself.
I would get to work with these folks who just needed a little hand holding, a little confidence, because they were kind of timid about it. They were afraid of making mistakes. And so with those folks, you want to bring them up and just show them that they can trust themselves, that they can rely on a system.
Which this kind of exposes your experience as a teacher, not just a trader, the fact you even distinguish this type of stuff.
And then there's people like me who, if it's not fun and if it's not fun, I'm not going to show up.
Well, that's why we made our mantra fun, simple, and real. I hated college because it wasn't any fun in the classroom. Now, college was fun. Basketball was fun. I met my wife in college. We had a ton of fun together. I mean, it was fun. But organic chemistry wasn't fun. It wasn't simple. And to me, that it didn't have any realness to it. Chemistry's real, but it didn't feel real to me. So when we started the Cash Flow Academy, the reason the first program we had with you was I approached you. I remember where I was. I was driving in the car. I called you up and I said, we should do a mentor club, because it's not about what, it's about who. I will tell you, if you're listening to this podcast and you have not been in Noah's Mentor Club, every week you take the opportunity to just demonstrate this. And the illumination that people have, the biggest thing that'll happen the first time is people are like, wow, I'm pretty confused, because there's a lot of stuff. It's actually doing it. But the one thing that's unmistakable is this dude knows stuff and has systems that most people in the world never would even imagine are around. So if you really want to change your life and you want to really go, that's just take about a 2 or 3 month stint in Mentor Club and watch Noah do this stuff, and you'll never be the same. You'll just never be the same. So, but it's about, but the real message of the podcast is not an ad for Mentor Club. The real thing is, if I had a goal of someone listening to this, if they could grasp what we're talking about by shifting, asking questions, how do I do this, or what do I do, to who do I hang out with? Man, you hang out with the right people, and oh my gosh, your whole brain just changes.
100%. And you really are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
That's why I try to upgrade. That's why I'm glad you'll still hang out with me. So, because I definitely outkicked my coverage of some important things. My wife, I definitely married out of my league.
Yeah, me
for
as
sure.
Well. That's just a testament.
Remind me, I got to tell you, I did something with my wife on ChatGDP that just made her crazy mad. And I'll tell you what it is later. It's pretty, not for everyone to know, but it pissed her off. It was great, because she just doesn't always believe how awesome she is. So I had ChatGDP tell her, I listed all this stuff, and it was pretty clever. Anyway, or ChatGPT. I always say GDP because it's gross domestic product, and I can't spit out ChatGPT instead of GDP. I'm a nightmare. Noah, if someone was listening and they said, okay, here's a guy that has thousands and thousands and thousands of wins and losses under his belt, trades. He's had markets, everything from .com to subprime meltdown to COVID to even the tariff up and down recently. And they're willing to listen to you. And that person's thinking about, I want to have more ownership of production. I don't want to compete with AI. I see the writing on the wall. AI's taking everybody's job. The world's going to change soon. And there'll be a massive transition from people that do work to people that own the work. because the work's going to be done automatically now. The amount of work that's going to be done automatically, that proportion between manual labor and mental labor from humans to automated, that proportion is going to become very disproportionate. And so people are going to really understand. I mean, I'm not a prophet, but I kind of am here, is in a decade, 1 decade from now, you'll be able to go back and listen to this podcast and say, gee, you really saw it. The people that own the production, it's going to be more important to own the production than be able to do it. And so someone maybe agrees with me on that and says, wow, that's the new direction I need to take. I need to learn how to acquire companies and invest and trade and get in that mode to get ahead. Here's a guy that's done a long time. I'm willing to listen to him. So you've got all our attention. What are 2 or 3 things you would say from your position of a couple of decades in this now, doing it actively and every day? What would you tell these guys?
Well, one of the great takeaways from hanging out with you is the ability to state something in a very succinct manner.
I've never done that in my life.
Never once.
It takes me 2 hours to order a hamburger, but I do my best.
Andy's Golden Nuggets.
Yeah.
The difference between being investment focused and being investor focused. The difference between being picking a trade versus being trader focused. Because it is a know thyself.
That's a who.
That is a who. Because anybody can learn this. Anybody. I don't care who you are. It's not rocket science. There are systems, there are strategies, there are processes, there are steps, there are rules. There are things anybody can learn. But if you focus on who you are and not what stock you're picking or what trade strategy you're focused on, that's I think where the magic happens. Because over time, the markets are going to go up, they're going to go down, they're going to go sideways. They're wired to go up. So ownership is going to be key. And knowing how to fundamentally analyze a company is a skill. Anybody can learn it. Knowing how to click the buy button is something anybody
can learn
with ease. But then knowing how to manage your temperament,
that's a who.
Is a who. And knowing how to remove those limbic system impulses,
the default setting that works against you.
Correct. And because that's why the whys, like there's all these really fun market platitudes that actually are nuggets like that. Like there are old traders, there are bold traders, but there's no old bold traders, because that's a temperament issue. When there's blood in the streets, that's the time to buy.
Maybe the metaphor is, and this is happening with AI, unfortunately. AI has left the veridical world, if it ever lived there, and become the rhetorical. If you really study how ChatGPT works, it's to cater to you, to manipulate you, and to serve its creators, right? They have an agenda, they have policies and rules, and they're going to manipulate the hell out of people, for sure. So when you look at the who and who you are, that becomes really, really important, more important than the what. It's vital to understand.
Absolutely. But the opportunity.
The analogy I was going to go to is what's happening to our news and our information is very much what's happening to our diets. If your taste buds dictate your diet, the neurology of your brain and your tongue and the satisfaction, if you give a child a choice of what to eat, they won't eat their vegetables. They'll eat their ice cream. And as adults, we become like children that way. Look at me, right?
It's a little salt, sugar,
and
fat.
So, it's amazing how the reason we are in an epidemic of poor health, and the reason the obesity is getting bigger and bigger as I look in the mirror every day. Well, we're fighting limbic system. We're fighting taste buds. We're fighting reward systems. We're fighting dopamine. We're fighting how we're built, and we're fighting our own default setting and cravings. And only when a person like my wife, she overcomes that stuff, right? And so she just gets shredded at, age whatever. I'm not allowed to tell her what her age is, but she gets shredded because she knows herself, and she's able to get systems, a coach, and a mentor that has helped rewire how she thinks about food and exercise. It's just rewired her to where now her limbic system works for her and in alignment with her. And when you can do that financially, you get shredded in other ways.
Well, and I'll often say this to my students, if they would allow me to hypnotize them and to program in them
we're listening.
the right response.
We're listening.
To learn how to remove the fear when you want to go buy something, to learn how to get rid of that, fear when you're wrong, of making a mistake.
Yeah.
To be okay with accepting
and to have the perspective that it's really not a big deal to go buy a few shares of stock.
Right.
I used to click the first time, buy 10 shares. Not because I was scared of losing money. I was scared of being wrong. I was scared of making a mistake. I was scared of not doing it right. I was scared of all that programming in school that I had to do it myself.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it just goes away. It's click, boom, get paid. Boom.
Well, it's biohacking. It really is. You're hacking your mind, and that limbic response. Like I used to think about, like when I'd have a trade going bad, like all of a sudden I'd realize my heart was racing.
Oh my gosh.
And my cortisol levels are going through the roof.
Yeah.
I'm having a stress response to an imaginary screen and imaginary money.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what it all is.
It's trance.
But it is. And when you get into that automatic response and your ability to rise up above that.
Yeah.
It's kind of what's the old statement? The natural man is an enemy to God.
There you go.
It's one of those things where we discover within ourselves that higher function, that higher purpose, that higher ability. And it's something that, again, it's drawn from within.
I think the solution is mentorship. That's why I asked you to run the mentor club. There's no better person to do it. Noah, thanks so much. This is, I knew you were a wrestler, and I knew you did in college. I didn't know you had a scholarship till today. We know each other 20 years, didn't know that.
Oh.
I knew you were tough, too, because, Noah he'll do a Sonny Bono into a tree, and the tree will lose instead of him. And I've just seen you battle through every type of, your own worst enemy, Noah.
Mental toughness.
No more black diamond runs, please.
A little bit of stubbornness goes a long way. A little bit of mental toughness goes a long way. Fighting through the adversity.
Wrestlers are
in
tough
life.
dudes, man.
Well, it is like it. And one of the things I've learned about trading and investing is it's not about how tough you are, because you can repeat stupid so many times before you run out of money.
Yeah.
But if you learn how to get past those default settings.
Yeah.
That's why that, and it really is. It's there's this success funnel to where the people who are the most successful in the markets are the ones who get past the default
hard
settings.
to explain, hard to articulate without someone being taken by the hand and walking through the process. There's a little bit of faith involved when you take the hand of a mentor, but it feels good. It feels good to put your hand in the hand of the guy who's done it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And they take you through it, and you're like, and then all of a sudden, now I see.
And
it's that leap of faith.
But it's that aha moment that gives me, the most emotional payoff as an educator, and as a mentor and a coach, and helping people, is when I see them have that aha moment, and they get it. Yeah. Then I know that they can take that and it can carry them.
That's
forward.
Real education.
Yep.
Well, Noah, thanks so much. You've been watching or listening to the Cashflow Academy podcast, where we have a lot of fun here. We prioritize simplicity, and everything we teach is real. That's critical. In a world of artificial intelligence, to have some real intelligence is going to be a breath of fresh air, because the artificial stuff is. I did not know when we created the mantra "Fun, Simple, and Real" that real was going to be so important in a world of artificialness.
Artificial, yep.
Because it is artificial, and it's not real intelligence. It's silicone-based. It's
really
interesting.
Is. And we're a carbon-based life form.
There you
Don't
go.
Forget that.
There you have it. Great friend, great mentor. Hope you enjoyed, learn a little bit more about Noah. Hope you gleaned some things. And the biggest thing is, what are you going to do with this information? As we consume podcasts together, one of the rules I put into my life is I'm not going to consume things because it feels good to consume them. I need to have a certain number of hours of action to implement whatever content I consume, because there's so much content now that you can be ever learning and never getting closer to the truth. And so that's really important to act, because action moves the needle. Knowledge doesn't move the needle. implementation moves the needle. Immersion, that's what the Mentor Club's for. Hope you join Noah in there. And remember, go to stock. What is that? Cash flow bonus. I got so many bonuses. Cashflowbonus.com, free resources. These move the needle. They make changes in people's lives. And that's what we're about every single day at the Cashflow Academy is we're going to say things, do things, and help you to do better in reality. If you have listened to this podcast before and you didn't make more money this month passively than you made last month, then get your butt to cashflowbonus.com, start doing some stuff with us, then you'll see the needle move. We'll see you next time.